only seconds before we began broadcasting, I said, holy something. Can't remember what I said. But I realized that I'm running Photoshop and InDesign, and I'm running... I mean, the tab situation I've got going on it's egregious. It is... It's pretty ludicrous. I'm like, well, okay. So if we crash and burn, it's all my fault.
Is your computer making a loud grinding noise?
It really is.
What's that smell?
What is that smell? I smell future sorrow. It's Mumamo. Hashtag Mumamo. Mutants and Masterminds Monday. And this is our pre-funk. It's where everyone kind of comes in and they take a seat, get comfy, order your cocktails. Tab game on point. Thanks, Claude. Jordan Taylor says, hey guys, what's up? We're just living the dream.
Right?
The Mumamo dream. There's something really satisfying about just saying that, Mumamo.
You just like saying it because it hurts me.
Right.
That's just an added bonus.
Mumamo.
Poop says, happy Mumamo. Calvin says, I love the smell of Mumamo in the afternoon. We were just talking about an odd smell before we...
Yes.
I think it's the smell of the Clown Hotel, if I'm not.
I believe that smell is coming from you, Troy. Why do you smell like a clown motel?
Right. Yeah, I passed through a pack of clowns. That is a smell that lingers. But yeah, so today we're on Mutants and Masterminds Monday. We're talking about finding Fae on Earth Prime. And hey, look at that Pride logo. I sure like that.
Right?
Yeah. Handsome. Happy Pride. For our friends in chat, as we're kind of going through, our just kind of talking about the Fae on Earth Prime, get your questions ready to roll and your thoughts and ideas and all those kinds of things. But before you do that, make sure you like what you're watching. Give it a thumbs up or a heart or whatever the measure is. Give us all of them. And then make sure you're following us. If you are watching on YouTube, you want to be a subscriber. If you are watching over on Twitch, you want to follow us. If you're, watching on Facebook, which a lot of people do. Keeping Zuck in business. Apook said they just lost power in Casa de Pook.
Oh.
Uh-oh. So slowly he will fade away. You know what? Speaking of fading away, let's get rid of this clunky, what I like to call the modesty shield, and say, howdy, you two. I'm going to slide this music down. Good Mumamo to you both. And I'm looking at Steve's like...
And also to you?
Right? Is that the proper response?
Right? I think so. Yeah. And it is definitely Mumamo unto you, because it's that kind of a thing. Let's see. Anytime Sean Dugan says something, I've got to be like, what? What is it? Let's see. Oh, okay. There is a question. This is not directly related to the Fae. Maybe we'll talk about it here first, unless we say no. Mm-hmm. No, Sean. But it's not the Fae, but I do have a question about what the manual of the Madrasis is supposed to be in the power profiles, if it just has the mention of magic of the Madrasis.
So the Manual of the Madrasis is a fabled Earth Prime magical artifact that the Master Mage level sorcerer can use to do all kinds of good and heroic things against the forces of evil.
So we go into it a little bit more in the second edition Book of Magic, which Honestly, this should be one we consider updating for the Patreon. Just
It really should,
we
actually.
reference it all the time.
Let's see. Jordan asked, "Do you use different types of Fae in the game?" Absolutely. Okay, I gotta tell you this, folks.
We do.
Yeah, Steve, being Steve, I was going to ask, hey, Steve, can you give me some background on anything that we might have been talking about in the past? Wow, this list, Steve, it's great. It talks about what it is, where to find it, in what book to find it, and on what page. I'm going to show it just real fast. Let's see if I can do this without crashing my whole system. But yeah, so that's what we're talking about. And then, so Claude says, how did you pronounce it, Steve? Madrosis?
Madrosis.
Madrosis'
mystical mansion. I don't know if they have a mystical mansion.
I mean, no reason they couldn't.
Jones says,
I guess they
please.
Could.
Yes, please, on that updating of the Books of Magic.
Book of Magic.
Yeah. The Patreon gangbusters going wild, all kinds of people. You can check it out, dear watcher and listener, by going to patreon.com/mutants masterminds, and $3 a month is the starter, and you just get access to all kinds of great stuff, not to mention direct access to these folks here.
Yeah, we've just started the Click, which is one of my personal favorite supervillain groups.
I love it.
Patreon. So they are going to be going for the next 3 weeks as we detail all the members.
And that was a vote by the Patreon, and they chose Crooks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So I guess the next books we put up for what to convert are going to be Paragons or the second edition Book of Magic. Because it sounds like people are into it.
Yeah, certainly do. Yeah, we'll have to, and let's see. I'm going to share this real fast. We'll see how grotty it is, because I'm sharing it on a screen that's about 5 feet wide. So,
There you go, Troy said.
Might want to zoom in a little.
Right? Yeah. That's
Let's do that.
So where did you get a 5 foot wide screen?
Yeah, right. I mean, it was a parting gift from a company that I worked for. But here we go. Okay.
Did they know they were giving it to you?
They didn't. Yeah, I was going to say they didn't, but they did. They gave me 2. I've got more screen real estate than I've got.
And Avalon. Just fixed it.
I didn't say anything.
No.
What is this? A list for ants? Quiet, you. Claude's already getting started on me. Okay, so Steve, now, how long did it take you to compile all of this? Did it just kind of come out of the Encyclopedia Stevia, or?
No, I mean, it didn't take that long. It was mostly just going through all of our PDFs and finding the different references to the Fae and Fairy and all of that.
That's great. Yeah. I know that there are going to be questions about like the Seelie and Unseelie courts. There's some conversation over on YouTube about that when we brought that up, and then also how to pronounce some of these things. And that's just for me personally.
But we don't. Is pronounced fables.
Fables. Okay, not fables.
No, not fables.
Fables gange. Okay, cool. And then so. When we're talking about this particular subject, it's all focused on Ert Premier, right?
Yeah. Eart. It's pronounced Eart.
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 I think it's pronounced Eart. Yeah. So I don't know that we intended to go alphabetical on this party, and if we even really meant it, have. I'm going to share a link to this to everybody so that you can pull it up in the comfort of your own home, because I do prefer this particular view over that one. So, okay, where do we start? We got we got individuals and organizations. What did I say? Individuals, institutions, and sort of intrigues of the Fae world. Yeah. Now, are Fae, some of them or all of them, native to Earth Prime, or have they come from a place, or do we?
Well, in Earth Prime particularly, the Fae are from another dimension that we refer to as fairy, or the fairy realm. Some cases, they are basically beings from another universe that has probably some different physical laws of some kind. Probably much more magically dominated reality than ours. That allow the fairies to all have some innate kind of magic.
So are they so typically, sort of the lore of, sort of our world is that they're kind of mischievous and a little
Mhm.
malevolent. If you don't, if you step in their fairy circle and don't give them a bowl of clotted cream or something, that they'll come back and light your house on fire or something. What's kind of a role do the Fae take in M&M lore and culture?
Well, I mean, in superhero games and comics in general, they tend to run the gamut from like mischievous trickster types who, take heroes on wacky, sort of fun, weird side adventures to like genuinely dangerous, malevolent creatures. Like
Mhm.
Catherine the Red in Rogues Gallery is specifically a very dangerous renegade fae who,
Yeah.
chops people's heads off.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Because,
that's
yeah,
dangerous.
a lot of fae from traditional mythology are just, murderous bastards. Kelpies
Mhm.
drown people, Rusalkas drown people. They like drowning people.
They like
Yeah.
drowning people a lot. Yeah.
Now,
But
here's
then
something
you,
that. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
you've got things like pukas that, mostly just bark and startle you or steal things from you
Mhm.
or
Like a sock.
yeah, and then you've also
Right.
got things like Domovoi, which are genuinely helpful towards humans, where they take up a little residence in your house and they sort of hang out and help
Mhm.
you with chores because they just want a warm home to live in.
Oh, I
Right.
need one
That
of
would be a
those.
really fun thing for a superhero group, is if they had a group of domestic fairies in their headquarters who were, just kind of taking care of things. It would be interesting for a magical group, but it would be even better if just a regular old, like mainstream superhero team, their, secret headquarters just had, brownies, who were like taking care of things every
Mhm.
once in a while and keeping an eye on things and cleaning things up and all of that. That would be fun.
I love that, and I also love the idea of like how you could potentially introduce such a thing, like there being some trouble that the heroes have to take care
Hmm.
of. They find out that these are Fae that are just trying to be helpful
Right?
and decide to keep them or shelter
Yeah.
them as it were. But yeah, I
Well, it
love
would be
that.
great. It would be great if the way I would introduce it is just having these sort of weird things happening for a while. Of like, oh, like my uniform is clean again, or that wasn't that broken. It's fixed. What happened?
Right.
And
Yeah. Right.
then you do the scenario where the villain takes over the hero's base and traps them all, and they're trying to figure their way out, and that's when the brownies are like, well, we have the keys for you, like
Yeah,
Hey,
we're
we're
here
here
to
to
help.
help.
I love that. I love that. I also want to say real quick, hey to RC. Also, hello to our friend Esquire. Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, your favorite. Oh my gosh, we're already starting. Here come the
Oh.
puns again, falling on my head
Yeah,
like a
it's
tragedy.
they are a real favorite in fantasy RPGs and in modern fantasy RPGs, but don't show up a lot in superhero RPGs. Even
Yeah.
though, I mean,
No.
they give you the exact same weird, sort of fun storytelling potential where, they tend to be very connected to either elements of nature or strong human emotions. So
Hmm.
they are, natural lead ins for story where, you have a dryad in the city's park who has like a personal little domain. And if anything threatens it, she'll lash out, but she'll also protect people within it. And
Right.
that
Hmm.
can be local weirdness that the heroes are just aware of, especially if they're mystical heroes, but it can also be like a moral choice they've got to make. Like if if some development plan calls for tearing out this part of the park to replace it with, say, an amphitheater or a community center, and the Dryad is terrorizing the construction crews that keep trying to do this, and the heroes go in thinking it's a plant-based villain, and only to find out that, oh, there's this benevolent spirit here that doesn't want any of this to change. Well, how do you find a solution to that?
Yeah, that is great, and you know, it's Sean. I think that's it. Using Fae in your encounter, it does sort of suggest fun, silly things like tying your underwear up in knots, or you know, as Sean was saying, or you know, but also you know have a nice build up to that the mega Fae, you know, like the big king and or queen. Now here's a question: what is the governmental hierarchy amongst the Fae? Is it different for each of the kind of Fae, or?
Well, fairy legends tend to be based on, you know, medieval, you know, human cultures. So they tend to reflect that notion at the time that there was a fairy nobility and that there's royalty and that there's an aristocracy and all of that, which may still be true, you know, because fairies may not be terribly imaginative in terms of changing that up. But there's also nothing that says that fairies aren't keeping up with the times, and that, you know, their culture has, you know, continued along with ours, and maybe the fairies have discovered, you know, democracy, and you know, they've decided that they have elections, and there are fairy mayors, and you know, fairy elected officials, and
heroes have to the heroes have to meet with Prime Minister Titania.
Right. You know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
She's trying to keep her coalition government together, and you know.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Squire's got it. Here's I love this. Squire's like, time to take this right to City Hall. The Dryad's about to learn about the variances in tax codes.
Well,
well, the developer's about to learn about the Dryad's prior claim to that property.
That's right.
She's been there for 5,000 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Crystal.
I mean, a lot of Fae stories tend to revolve around all those really elaborate politics where they just build these relationships and hold these grudges and have their weird personal agendas that they mostly work to entertain themselves because they're immortal. And so, you know, dragging heroes into the middle of that can be really fun if you like, you know, big political games, but you don't necessarily want to bring city politics into it. I think the best example ever of this was Gargoyles back in the 90s, where like the big culmination of the first 2 seasons of plotline were basically just a big pissing match between Oberon and Puck. About, you know, basically who gets to decide, you know, how much influence Fae get in the world.
I like it.
You could even have a whole, you know, scenario in your superhero game where the whole reason your super team is together is because of fairy manipulation, because they've just decided that pitting a group of their own pet superhumans, you know, up against some villains would be fun. And they've just engineered the whole thing.
Yeah,
I could see that. I could also see if you've got a rich sort of a Fae storyline that you could really explain a lot of things or go on a lot of side sort of fun, you know, beats. I also just want to say to Claude, shame on you. And, you know, Aura brings up a really good question. So, you know, the question is, does the Lorax count as Fae? And the reason that I think is interesting to ask is because I think when I think of Fae, I was strictly thinking about winged, you know, lithe little, you know, sort
little
of
Victorian fairies.
That's right. But they kind of, there's a category that includes a lot of different kinds of creatures.
Look up the
Very much
Dulahan.
so.
It's a great little Irish fairy. I'm sure you'll love. Or the Nuka-Levy.
Say the name of it again.
The Dulahan or the Nuka-Levy. I'll send you a spelling.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Right.
I will do that for sure. Yeah, so Sean said trolls, goblins, redcaps, beats by Fae. Claude,
Yeah, all kinds of fairy animals and fairy creatures and weird fairy hounds and shape changers
Hmm.
and
Oh yeah, fairies are good excuses to have superpowers in your world in general, where
yep,
you know
absolutely.
fey magic has bled through, and that's the reason things can just defy the laws of physics now.
Yep.
Gotcha.
You
So,
could have a whole superhero setting where superpowers originate from people who
Mhm.
are fey blooded in one way or another, and all they were waiting for was enough contact with fairy magic to activate their hidden potential.
I
Yeah,
like it. Holy. Oh, I'm just coming familiar with the nuka-levy. Is that right? This
I've
is
always called it Nuka Levy. It's not like
nuka-levy.
Yeah,
anybody. People don't say it a lot in public. I've only ever read it.
right.
Yeah, you
It's
just
not
don't.
like we go out to the Nuka Levy events every year and hear
That's
the Nuka
right.
Levy songs.
On Nuka-levy Day, when
Mhm.
Nuka-levy comes clip-clopping into your nightmares,
Yep.
responsible for droughts and epidemics. Wow. Okay, so this is pretty intense. Yeah.
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 Grims are another one of those intense fae where they're big black dogs that sort of predict people's deaths. Uh,
Deaths. Yeah. The whole
Banshee,
plan.
which are
Yeah.
not like reapers like people tend to think they are. Well, I mean they can be. It's your
Mhm.
fiction, but they
Sure.
also tend to be guardian spirits that follow a family, and when a member of that
Right.
family dies, they wail because they're horrified by
Warning. Yeah.
mourning.
Gotcha. Listen, Pope, you contain yourself. You're almost making me laugh over something that is just, folks. This is why you want to be here, live and watching the chat, just because these shenanigans. I'm telling you, it's just real put
Hmm.
upon. Now I'm looking at Squire. You too. All of these people are just out of control. But I wanted
Right.
to ask then to answer Aura's question. Is the Lorax a Fae?
Could
Absolutely,
be.
I think so too.
Yeah.
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 Squire.
it's
I
Jeez.
the
mean, as
must.
Jonesy points out, a lot of the, sort of interdimensional imps of
Mhm.
comic book fame could be Fae, or
Oh
at least the
Yeah,
yeah.
explanation for Fae
yeah.
beings, maybe.
Mr. Bictus Pitlick, I mean, is weird quantum nonsense, but he's basically Fae.
Right. But he's
Yeah.
basically a malevolent leprechaun.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry, Crystal.
Oh, I was going to say, there's no reason your family can't have property that is infested with Fae when you go to visit it. That's a common trope in old Silver Age comics, where
Yep.
you'll
Yep.
inherit a castle and it's haunted, or it's filled with leprechauns, or uh, you'll inherit a bridge that has a troll under it, or more realistically, like a troll is driven out of the Fey realm and takes up residence under a major bridge in your town and starts causing trouble.
Right.
I love that. So John mentions, is it Eco Turso?
Guturso
Was
was
mentioned
mentioned
in
in
the
the
Atlas.
Atlas of Earth
Yeah.
Prime. I don't know that character, but I have my
I was going to
atlas
say,
right
we
here.
have
Of
the
course
reference.
you do. That's one of the things too, Steve. I just wanted to say thank you for that list. What's
Sure.
exciting is we've got that list. Shows you the books and things that folks can kind of pull out of their library or pull out of ours for a couple
Yeah.
bucks.
And
And,
for those at
you know,
home, Ukalevi is basically the origin of the Headless Horseman mythology from
Okay.
American colonialism,
yeah,
or
pretty
the
much.
American colonial era, which is
Yeah.
different than American colonialism.
Claude asks, is that
And
the beast of the Baltic?
Yep, apparently that's Beast of the Baltic. I
mm,
wouldn't necessarily call that a Ukalevi, but I mean, you could definitely go with that. Ukalevi are
right.
they're like a skinless horse merged with a skinless dude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that chase people down. They're supposed to come from the sea, and they bring droughts and storms, and drag people off into the water. And if they dry out, they die.
Yeah, they also have the breath that's bad that wilts
You would
crops.
think.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
you're right. It kind of goes without saying.
The best thing about Fae is there's no like manual for them, so you can interpret them
Yeah.
however you want. So if you
Which
want
is-
your
And
campaign's
that's
Fae
the
to be
thing too. Is as most of the Fae legends we're talking about are largely, Celtic in origin, or at least sort of Indo-European. You get beyond that, and if you really broadly apply the definition of trickstery spirits that are shape changers and come from, the wilderness, you have a vast potential range of fairy beings in human mythology.
Yeah, and it's so a lot of this stuff coming from very, very localized regions. Like, you talk about sort of these very small forested areas where the little village is talking about there's things that are happening. So you can really take the flexibility of looking at where is this village and what's happening around and what is the weather like, and and really, yeah.
I was just going to say, if you're running like a John Constantine or Justice League Dark style game where your primary antagonists are mystical things like sorcerers and demons and things like that, then Fae are great NPCs because they tend to be
Yes.
like self-interested middlemen who...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Sean Dugan, being a Sean, says, I always thought that the Doulahan was more the headless horseman. Is that is that another creepy Fae creature?
It is.
Gotcha.
Depending on who you talk to, it's a ghost or a Fae, but there's a lot of overlap between the two in Celtic mythology.
Yeah,
indeed.
And Claude, you bring up a good point that a lot of the Fae stories are based on nostalgia and loss and, sort of mournful moments and things. But, so there is something that I've been just jonesying to find out. And that is when we're looking at things like the Pact, like, what is that? There's a great interest in the community about sort of whatever that situation is. It piques people's creativity and thought process.
Scheduled for the end of the month.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're going to talk about that in more detail. In fact,
nice. Well, so you hold your horses, Sean. It's a coming.
Ghostly or otherwise.
Ghostly or otherwise, right?
Hold your spectral steeds.
Right. We'll get to it.
We'll be talking about it in about 2 weeks, but it's basically a big magical contract that keeps supernatural creatures out of Earth, but has a ton of loopholes.
Yeah, and I do. So one of I think we pronounced this last time. It was the SH or not SH. Sorry, SHIT. No, it's SIDHE. And is it she? Is that what
she? Yeah,
she. Okay, gotcha. John asks, are any of you familiar with the Doc Sheed novels by Aaron Allstone?
Yes.
No.
I'm not either.
They're interesting. They're actually based on that principle that I talked about, the idea that the Fae history keeps up with our history. Although in the Doc She books, basically Fae history is about, I want to say, like 50 years behind our history. So it's basically about a modern character who interacts with the Fae, who are basically in their version of the 1930s, and that basically is a Fae pulp heroes and a Fae sort of Art Deco sort of era for them. It's a fun concept.
Interesting, Sean. That tracks. You just sort of connected two synapses in my brain that weren't connected prior. That's really interesting. Mentioning that the Bane Sheed got regularized into Banshee. I love that. Now, Raymond shares a couple times. I want to just say, Raymond mentions Raven, Coyote, and other tricksters of Native American folklore. I would caution you not to reinvent a culture to kind of make it into Fae. I just think it's something to I would move around that with some sensitivity, but it's definitely an interesting thought process to kind of go, where are we borrowing from other cultures and how are we doing it in a way that's not, reinventing someone else's sort of history and ancestry. So, but yeah,
A
go
sort
ahead.
of better way to think of that is the way we talked about it in Paragons, which was the notion that all spirits, of whatever kind, were basically beings from the Imageria, and they're all basically just dreams given life in one
Mm,
form or another. Ranging from deities on the way down to tiny fairy tricksters and everything in between. But it's something that is sort of transcultural
I
as
like
far as
that.
that goes. It includes everything that humans have ever thought of.
I
So
love
it's
that.
not saying that those spirits are Fae. It's just saying that they share certain common qualities.
Yeah, it's saying that Fae are a part of this larger category.
Yeah, yeah, I like that for sure. So here's a question. Jordan brings up asks, do you use the different types of weaknesses for the Fae? Like, what is the
Yeah.
construct of a Fae?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the Fae, because from mythology you can give them almost any powers. Like, they can control the weather, they can curse you so that everybody hates you, or they can make it so your animals only give sour milk. They can make your land fallow. They can make your land rich. They can make magical shoes. Like, any
Right.
excuse, any kind of power you want. Like, you can have a Fae whose whole shtick is gloves, which is
Yep.
big for superheroes, because they can make your gloves heavy. They can make your gloves just rot and fall off. They can make
I
your
like
gloves stick
that.
to things. They can whatever
Right.
weird conceptual powers you want work for Fae.
I
Mm,
like that. Suddenly your
it's
gloves are
true.
like
And
fingerless lace gloves.
likewise, with their vast range of powers, Fae have just a tremendous number of weird weaknesses and, like quirks to them. I mean, the common one is that they're vulnerable to iron.
Yeah.
And
Ah,
sometimes there's a particular definition of cold iron,
Mhm.
which
okay.
is usually iron that hasn't been worked on a forge, but it could be any number of definitions. Some people say it's meteoric iron or
Yeah.
magnetic iron or any number of other things.
Yeah. A lot of them
Um,
have a behavioral codes that they have to ascribe to, like they
mhm.
can't lie, or they have to uphold any agreement they make, or they have to show you leniency if you like show them something they've never seen before, or if you solve a riddle.
Is Rumpelstiltskin
Right.
Fae?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very interesting, Claude. I think you're right in the zone here, my friend. Instead of just giving powers or using standard powers, a sufficiently powerful Fae could grant complications.
Mhm. Yeah.
Pretty
I
And
like
much.
that.
at the far end, Fae are basically all the things about elves that Tolkien used to make everything we think of about elves comes from old myths about the
Right.
Sidhe. So you can just have Fae who are incredibly powerful elf swordsmen slash wizards slash, you know,
Hmm.
nobles.
Oh,
Yeah.
Aura brings up
Indeed.
a kind of a
Oh,
type.
changelings.
Yeah,
Yes.
a type of Fae, but also a really great sort of trope kind of that you can kind of adopt.
Hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well, and changelings are great. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, hiring a changeling to stand in for your secret identity when you're out working is
Right.
both a great idea and a terrible idea.
Right. And changelings make a terrific, origin story because, I mean, traditionally changelings were basically fairies that were left in the form of human infants that the Fae abducted, in order to bring them into fairy. So, a character who, discovers that the reason they have superpowers is because they're actually not human, but a fairy changeling, who was left in the place of a human. And then, of course, then becomes the question of what happened to that human,
Right.
Ooh,
Yeah. What
that's your
does
villain
happen?
now, I bet.
right?
Ooh, I like that.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, if we're talking about Fey origins for powers, don't forget like Fey magic and weird Fey artifacts.
oh,
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, old Old stories are filled with great tales about, somebody becomes a miraculous hero because a fae gifted them a sword or a medal or something like that made them indestructible or super strong or made it so that no person could beat them in combat.
Yeah,
I mean,
interesting.
the origin story from the first episode of Ms. Marvel, and I don't think this constitutes a spoiler, really. The weird family heirloom that shows up, that somebody decides, would make a great part of their costume, for a Halloween event or, a Ren fair or what have you, or cosplay, that turns out to be a fairy artifact.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is fun. Just thinking of all the possibilities, both Jahan and John, have brought up Hellboy and how they borrow, some of the backdrop. They go to the market and all of that stuff.
The Hellboy comics have some great Fae in them. Very disturbing Fae.
Something that I do love about the Fae mythos, all the stuff behind, the Fae sort of stories are things like that they had to count things, like that if something was put before them, so that kind of very simple, but clever sort of tricks and things. Claude would like to say that the Fae are they have a weakness to magnetic iron because they're robots. Wake up, sheeple, he says. So,
that's true. And then Jordan's calling out all the other Fae weaknesses we missed, especially church bell. My favorite, salt, cold iron, counting things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rooster crows.
Oh yeah,
bad puns.
A lot of times dogs specifically.
Like animals can often sense
animals
the Fae.
Domesticated animals, horses.
Yeah, and let's see here. This is I was just also thinking about the idea of like suddenly your milk is sour. Jean earlier was like, not my milk. But like that's go ahead.
Oh, just saying like that you can translate that to modern day as being like all your endeavors fail spectacularly.
Right. Yeah.
So, like your
just a real run of bad luck.
Right.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. Fae and computers are just a recipe for disaster.
Yes. Yeah. And cell phones and the whole thing. That is really great. That also could be a solution.
How did that folder in my smartphone get emailed to everyone?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
What is my desktop?
My phone just keeps making a long, loud fart sound, and I can't stop it. But I could see the Fae in that sort of Gremlins kind of way, solving a problem of cell phones. If they're malfunctioning, then how do people do a thing? They have to do it the old-fashioned way. You get ratioed on all your tweets, right? Yep.
Do we want to pick Fae at random and figure out like superpowers they would have if they're heroes or villains?
Yes.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we want to start with a name, or how do you want to do that?
Let me see if there's a random Fae.
A random Fae generator.
There certainly is.
Random Fae encounters. No, that's
kind of D&D-ish.
Kind of work though.
Oh, Raymond, you're speaking our language. I could just see Dr. Corgi and some Fae little troublemaker.
Yes. We all know about the fairy cavalry.
Oh yes,
that would be so cute.
When you own a corgi, you can't help but hear about the Fae cavalry.
Right, that's right. Dr. Corgi tries to tell us about it every day. Let's see here. Yeah, I could also see Fae having an impact on animals that, where the animals are allies and acting out, Fae at the zoo or something. Go ahead, Crystal.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go with nymph.
All right. Nymphs are great.
Okay, so give me I know vaguely what a nymph is.
Oh, they're basically water spirits. They're Fae who rule over a stretch of lake or river or a pond or a spring. So
right.
And so, is it are nymphs different than sirens?
Yes,
they are.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. Okay, so water-based.
Hmm.
Yeah, almost certainly
You've got a
water.
lot of leverage from there. You could decide, for example, that nymphs are so water-based that their physical forms are made out of water.
Mm,
In which case they'd have some sort of alternate form and some kind of insubstantial fluid quality, and some other abilities just from being made out of water as
Yeah.
far as that
right.
goes.
Yeah.
Could have
That's one
divided.
possibility.
Probably have aquatic abilities, so they can drag you
Hmm.
underwater, and they fight even better, but you're at a disadvantage.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
They may have.
imagining. Oh, I was just going to say, I'm imagining they've devised very clever ways of traveling out of the sea because they're water. Like they're
Mhm.
if they're in a place like the Pacific Northwest, jumping from puddle to puddle, or hitching
Mhm.
a ride in your empty coffee mug, or something along those lines.
Well,
Right.
everybody has a water bottle out here.
Yeah, right. My water tastes really
Exactly. Everybody's got a bottle of water.
good.
You
That's
know.
right. That's right.
And yeah, could just have water control powers, which is basically
Mhm.
move object with the medium limitation. And
Right. Absolutely.
at least in the Pacific Northwest, there's water everywhere.
Oh, that's right. And Jordan mentions that
Yes.
nymphs are typically river and ponds, and so that's uniquely.
Mhm.
I mean, that's not uniquely. I mean, but it's very.
Water.
Yeah,
Yeah. Fresh water.
That's
Yep.
right.
Mhm.
Love that. And insubstantial is their main form, but they can with some concentration. So what would that power look like if you are just generally insubstantial, you're watery?
Well, it depends on how much concentration we're talking. You could simply invert the existing power and say that insubstantial is their normal form, but there's a sustained duration on them being solid rather than the other way around. Or you can say that it requires a certain amount of effort in order for them to really be solid, and that might be a little more of a limitation in some regards, depending on how limiting not being solid is for them.
Interesting. So I had a thought, and tell me if you think it's dumb, because it very well could be. I'd imagine that because of the watery nature, and also just humans doing what humans do, that the nymph, I could see the sort of almost like a spy group of nymphs that are sort of infiltrating a
Mhm.
leadership, something like one's posing as an ice sculpture, one's like all of these different sort of ways.
Are you suggesting a nymph heist?
Yeah, see, right?
Right.
Yes, yeah.
I may have to
Right.
rewrite my game for this coming Saturday.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, you can just the nymphs are like the things people talk about in restrooms.
Right.
Oh,
Oh, I could just see that. Like, oh, where were you posted? I was in the restroom.
By the sinks. The sinks.
Right. Right. I like that. I really do.
six.
Yeah, I can see them, either, doing a heist or yeah, wanting to take some technology that maybe is related to something that could be damaging to the ecosystem or,
Mhm.
something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
Interesting. Water cooler talk has a new
Well,
meaning.
like Crystal was talking about earlier, nature fae especially are often tied to a particular natural feature. So, if you're a nymph and humans are talking about damming a river, and creating a new lake or something out of your stream, then that's got some potential implications to your future existence.
Yeah. It would be interesting too to kind of play along the heist and that there be sort of an almost a ecological, a eco group that could, maybe they're trying to blame humans, but it's really this pack of nymphs that are, trying to stop whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and I could see why nymphs would, take to eco-terrorism.
Right?
Especially
That's
today.
right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Yeah, Klutz says favorite environment, water, of course. So
Mhm.
when is the thing? So when they're in water, they can substantiate enough to kind of grip or grab.
Mhm.
I'm trying to
Mhm.
imagine what a heist would look like if you came in as water and then you're stealing something. How would you get
You
out?
come in as water, and then you become a femme fatale.
Right.
Oh, right. That could you imagine sort of a sort of these
Oh,
collection of
one of them
killed.
comes in as the bartender, the other one comes in as the ice.
Oh, that's
Hmm.
brilliant. And I can also see like each one of this sort of collection of fae or of nymphs are like kind of Kill Bill baddies, you know. One's like
Hmm.
can use a sword, one can use a, you know, or I guess
Well,
maybe even be a sword or something. I
I
mean,
mean, you've seen what a water saw can do, right?
right. Yeah, no, Steve, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I mean, you just a pulse of, you know, cutting
You know.
water. Yeah, that's something. Let's see.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Go ahead.
want to talk to the fish in the giant fish tank at the villain's office?
I
Hmm.
love that. Claude's like, what about
Hey, another
somebody?
use for the aquarium danger zone.
Nice. Or I can also see Lighthouse.
Yep.
No.
Yeah,
Sure. Then
Okay.
we're starting to get into sirens, though,
that's
Yeah.
or
true.
naiads.
That's true.
Yeah. No, we don't. We're not going into the siren's turf.
No.
This is
Mm-mm.
interesting. What an interesting
Lasted too
combo.
long. We're not going to risk it.
That's right.
Nope.
That's right. We want to keep the peace. You know, Claude, you inspired me to think of this notion of like a villain of a two, like it's a pair and it's sort of a human with the nymph in a tank that can, you know,
Hmm.
operate from his back.
Hey, what have you
Let's
got in that nymph gun?
right. Exactly. You know, yeah, Jonesy, you've got the notion here.
I'm
Yeah, some kind of
I'm here for Squire Cortez's Sharknado Fae style,
right.
approach to
Jeez.
things.
All right. We want to go
Yeah.
with a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that.
All right.
We'll
Well,
end with
Crystal
this one.
searching, I was thinking that the whole notion of eco terrorists who have teamed up with a group of Fae or have Fae patrons or things like that would be something to confound the heroes.
I
Uh,
am. Go
I
ahead.
I don't mean to keep randomly picking water ones, but kelpies.
Okay, so
Ooh,
Kelpie
all
are
right.
like sea horses.
Yeah, they're fae that can turn into horses, and depending on who you talk to, they have like, human bodies and horse faces or horse
Oh,
skulls.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They
and
can also
Kelpie.
be beautiful women sometimes.
They can do what now?
They can also be beautiful women sometimes.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
We can call the intro "Why the Long Face."
Uh,
Right.
they live in rivers, lakes, and swamps, and try to lure people into the water where they can drown them.
Yep.
I like that. You know, I could see some sort of classic, sort of Hound of the Baskervilles kind of, you know, what's that in the swamp? It's me, Kelpie. Um,
But
so
yeah, they're a little bit trickster. They're
Yeah.
a little bit serial killer. You can always
Right.
play a heroic kelpie who wants to overcome that dire legacy that one or two bad ancestors gave all of them.
Right. We don't all try to drown people,
That
right,
is, that is so racist.
that is right.
right?
How ignorant that is.
Racist.
Just it's a very injurious stereotype.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it would be an interesting superhero where your only powers are you can be a hot chick or a terrifying giant goblin or a horse.
Right. Or a horse with a skull face.
Well, I
Right.
think
Sure.
the horse version doesn't have the skull face because the whole trick is they try to get people to climb onto their backs and then ride them in the
Right.
water.
And then, right. True.
Oh, and then they
Skull
take
face
them
is when
and
you're in your hulking goblin form.
interesting. Now, when it comes to when it comes to the transition and stuff, are Kelpie transitions or can transitions be kind of tied to moon, sort of the phases of the moon, or any
I
kind of
mean, they can be. I don't
Could
think they
be.
are, but
Yeah.
no reason they can't be in your game.
Right.
also
And the association with the moon and the water,
Mhm.
that kind of
Yeah.
makes sense.
That definitely have the
yeah.
ability to walk on water and breathe water.
Right.
Yeah, they'd be a very good thing that hangs out in the worst parts of town, like the docks or in the sewers.
Mhm.
They could be your
Right.
local cryptid that lives in the sewers and snatches the homeless people, or they could be like the misunderstood weirdo who protects the homeless communities and runaways and things like that.
Oh, I like that. Friends in chat, I don't think I'm alone in this, but, I will be reading, kind of a quick reading as we're talking and bringing up sort of these subjects. And Crystal will just from her brain pull out the references. It's incredible. I mean, I'm remarking on that because I was just reading as part of the Kelpie stuff that they were talking about the Loch Ness as a
Kelpie,
as a Kelpie, sort of that kind of cryptid kind of thing. I also like the notion that there's the Kelpie, then there's counterparts like the Nixie, the Wihwin, the Bunyip. I just wanted to say Bunyip, but I could see like some troubling conclave of all of the various nymphs coming together to hold court about sort of the greater, whatever pollution or their bad rap or whatever, Yes, Jonesy brings up something too. The kind of a Gotham City gang war style setting, except they're in the water.
It's carving up their turf.
Yep,
I like that. Okay,
and then naturally you've got the Seelie and Unseelie courts kind of warring over who gets to be in charge, and again, depending on the myths you look at, it's either like the Seelie are the good Fae and the Unseelie are the evil Fae, if you want to be very simplistic, or it's the Seelie are the Fae of the day who are in charge during the day, or the Unseelie are in charge at night, or the Seelie are in charge during spring and summer, and the Unseelie are in charge during winter and fall.
I mean, in one interpretation, the Seelie are simply the pretty Fae, and the Unseelie are simply the scary-looking ones. And that's the only difference between them.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the Fae who are associated with like new growth versus the Fae who are associated with decay.
I love that. Now, where did this go? So we've established Kelpies could be they're not chasing the waterfalls, they're hanging with the rivers and the lakes that you're used to, and then we've got the I do like the idea of nymphs coming to talk about Kelpies run wild, or nymphs being blamed for something that Kelpies are doing.
That'd be kind of again, if you're running any kind of magical focused game, that is exactly the kind of adventure hook you should use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Aura says, they can have just a little murder as a treat. I like that.
All right, you Kelpies have been very good. You can drown one person on our way home.
As a treat.
Right. But we get to pick the person.
That's right. That's right. Raymond, this is a dangerous area when we start talking about, childhood animated.
I was going to say, if you're going to talk DuckTales with Crystal, you better be ready.
You better come correct. Woohoo! Oh, I love it. I love it. So okay, here we are at 2:53, and I'm telling you, we get the creative motor running, and then we realize that we've just eaten up a full hour of time. And but this is very interesting conversation in general, and I really want to say to chat, I appreciate the opportunity, that sort of sharing of the books that you've read and those sorts of things. I think that is one of the most valuable things that we can do just as a community, just kind of share what your inspirations are. The other thing is there is such a wide breadth of things that you can do with this stuff. Just as we kind of round out the show, for you to how do you when incorporating Fae, what is sort of your how do you do that, or how do you prefer to do that in your games?
I mean, they just tend to be more like children than a lot of characters, where they wear their hearts on their sleeves. They tend to be very focused on one thing, and it's hard to shake them. They have a very, very focused perspective on the world.
I agree.
I could see them
I
also being willful and sort of angry,
Mhm.
vengeful for
Very
silly,
much.
silly small things. Yeah, yeah.
And I like the notion that Crystal brought up that the Fae are also very ambiguous. They're not necessarily good or bad. They could be either, depending on how you relate to them and what sort of mood they're in, and that sort of a thing. So they're an interesting element to play around with in that they have a lot of facets to them.
Yeah. In a lot of stories, Fae kill things because they don't understand death, because they're immortal. If
Hmm.
if you destroy them, they'll come back in a couple of,
Right.
under the next full moon or the next season or next year.
Interesting. So they would be
Yeah.
maybe a little more cavalier about it because
Sure.
doesn't everybody die that way?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a
Wow.
game, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. The slaw.
Slua
Slaw. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
Yikes.
in the back of your throat.
Yes. The
Slaw.
gothest of fairies.
Yeah, very, very sort of the gothist.
Now you're dipping into World of Darkness.
Right, right. Let's see. Raymond also suggests the webcomic Lore Olympus is an excellent series to check out for how nymphs are portrayed in a sort of modern setting. Even some catty ones who like to gossip. Yeah.
Traveling books.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Exactly. All right. So in the remaining, I can't believe time is moving so fast. We're in the slowest yet fastest time machine. My question
Mm.
for you, Steve, what do you got cooking out in the world? Anything that you want to share with our friends? New projects, special.
So let's see. We are working on more and more crooks for the Patreon, and we're Alex and I are digging into those, then passing off our stats to Crystal to present them beautifully to you in their final form on the Patreon. Um, and beyond that, folks should take this Pride Month to check out the Twilight Accord Patreon. Speaking of a completely different kind of fairies, and see what we're doing over there in queer fantasy adventures in the gloom and at the gates of the first city. We're gearing up for some meaty new releases with some more detail on the setting and more materials for folks to playtest. So
Yeah, I gotta
by all
say,
means,
as somebody who gets a little opportunity to check that stuff out before, it is the things that are cooking and the stuff that we've shared is got some real gravity. It's really great.
yeah,
Good.
honestly, the hard part for me is not just releasing all the stuff we have like
I
all at
know.
once. Just be
It's
like,
so
here.
difficult. Exactly. I was just talking to Joe because you're doing that with Joe Carricker, and I
Hmm.
was, I think it is just sort of there's a certain kind of person who can't resist, and you get all the presents, and they want you to. Oh, I'm that person. I'm just like, open them
Yeah,
all. They're all for you.
it's hard.
It is. Nice. Yeah. And thank you, Jonesy, for putting the link in
Mm.
chat. That's patreon.com/Twilight Accord. And come by and check it out. And then any personal projects, Steve. We talked about your Patreon in the past or anything kind of cooking in that
Yeah,
world.
folks can check out my Patreon for various icons things. I actually have something coming up on that I think will be of interest to Mutants and Masterminds fans next month. So keep an eye peeled for that. It will be at the beginning of July.
Also, it will be at patreon.com/Steve Kenson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. And Crystal, how about you? What do you got cooking? What's going on in your
Well,
world?
we've got the Mutants and Masterminds developer chat this Wednesday.
That's
So
right.
That's right.
And then Saturday, I will be running a Patreon game for 5 of our patrons. So we will see how that goes.
It's
I think
gonna
I've
be
got some ideas from today's chat for the adventure.
right. How fun! Absolutely. And folks, what Crystal's talking about is we do We invite the patrons to come have conversations, direct conversations, sort of there's no filter outside of the one where I can kick you out of the chat if you're, too punny. But also when we do these actual plays, you get to play a game that Crystal or Steve or Alex, who, by the way, I forgot to tell you, Alex not with us today because Alex ran about 70 games during Origins. Just killed it.
He's a brave man.
A brave man.
Yes, indeed.
Right, exactly. What he may lack in smarts, he makes up for with Mutants and Masterminds games that you can play at convention. So, absolutely. So he'll be back. He's actually, I thought he was taking a rest, but he's officiating a wedding. He never quits. He
just doesn't stop.
There's no off on that boy.
No, there is not. So with that, friends, I want to thank everybody in the chat. You have been just a wealth of creativity and shenanigans. We love them both. Not in equal measure. And of course, Steve, thank you. Crystal, this little slice of Monday is a real delight. And this one really rose to the occasion. Lots of great conversation. Now, if you've got other thoughts you want to share, friends, you have some ideas, you've got a correction, you've got, sort of a question. Maybe you have, a dating question or a mysterious rash. Do me a favor, send a note to letsplay@greenronin.com and we'll either...
Not medical advice.
Hashtag not doctors.
Right.
Hashtag no attached JPEGs. But definitely share, some thoughts or ideas, a deeper look, or even maybe some references, that you want to share with the community at large, and we will do so. Also, check us out this coming Thursday. Last Thursday, if you missed it, we had Joe Carricker on, and we talked all about Blue Rose. It was actually summertime in Aldous. We talked about everything from food to look at that cute. What is that? Is it a little toy?
Oh.
What's your fan? At first I was like, is that a little chicken leg? A little chicken leg for the puppy? There's Dr. Corgi. And, when you see Dr. Corgi, it's time to say, goodbye, friends. Have a good day, Dr. Corgi. Bye-bye. Look at that face.
Bye.
There we go. Have a great week, everyone.